Hey, this is Greg with Rewrite Your Stars, and today we're going to do another book review. This week's book review is What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast by Laura Vanderkam. And with that, I'm going to eat my breakfast. Alright, let's get into it. So first we have our 3 ratings for the book, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. We have our overall rating, our reasonability rating, and our practicality rating. So the overall rating is just how much I enjoyed the book, if I feel like it was a useful book for other people. The reasonability rating is this something that's reasonable? Is this something that I'm going to be able to do? And the practicality rating is it something that's practical for me to do right now? So for the overall rating, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. And the reason I did that is because it is such a short book that I got so much out of it that it was worth the hour that I put into listening to it. The reasonability rating, I also gave it a 5 out of 5 because all the things in the book are really reasonable to do. They're things that I could do today and would make a whole lot of sense. And she also talks about going into it gradually, which I thought was really reasonable. And the practicality rating, I also gave it a 5 out of 5. That makes it our first 5-star overall book. Before we get any further, I want you to know I am definitely a night owl. Last night I was up till 4 o'clock just working on stuff. Most nights I'm up till 1 to 2 o'clock. And when I can, I like to sleep in. And so this book seems a little bit counterintuitive to me because it's all about doing things before breakfast and waking up early and doing things before you need to. But Laura Vanderkam was really convincing. Let's talk about the 5 major principles that I got out of this book. Well, first up, willpower is a muscle. Now that one seems a little bit out there, right? Willpower is more of a mental thing, and your brain is a muscle, but willpower is definitely not something you think of as a muscle. But she talks about how there was a study done where they took a group of people and they made them fast for the day before they did the study. And then when they did the study, one group wasn't offered any food at all. One group was offered radishes, cookies, and cake, and the third group was given radishes, cookies, and cake, but told that they could only eat the radishes. And they found that when given a task to complete, the group that wasn't offered anything to eat was able to work on the task for over 20 minutes. The group that was allowed to eat whatever they wanted out of that list was also able to work 20 or more minutes. But the group that was presented with cookies, cake, and radishes, but only allowed to eat the radishes, were only able to work 8 to 12 minutes. And they came to the conclusion that that's because their willpower was drained from only being able to eat the radishes. They had to use their willpower to avoid the cookies and cake, and in doing that, they no longer had willpower for their task that they were asked to do. Because of this experiment, they've decided that willpower is a muscle. Metaphorically, willpower is a metaphorical muscle in that the more we use it, the more we exercise our willpower, the more we have. And on the flip side of that, if we exhaust our willpower, we don't have it after that. We have a finite amount of willpower for the day, at least until we rest and recuperate. In the morning, you've been resting for the entire night. And so when you wake up, your willpower is refreshed. If you take the time to get out of bed at an early time and do those things in the morning that you would normally not have the willpower to do on your own, then you'll be able to have that store of willpower. And then the things that have to be done and that you're gonna do regardless of whether or not you want to, those things can come later when that willpower is already kind of depleted. So you're prioritizing what kind of things you're gonna do first thing in the morning versus what you're gonna do the rest of the day. With that, the more often you use your willpower in a positive way, the stronger it becomes. And the easier it's going to become to not do the things that suck out your willpower first thing in the morning. The second principle was very similar to that, and it was if we willfully do things for a long enough time, it's no longer based on our willpower and it has just become a routine. And when we talk about it, we can talk about it like driving. When you are first driving, everything that happens in the car is a conscious choice. You're using your willpower to do those things. After 5-10 years of driving, you've come to the point where you can drive and go from one place to the next and be like, how did I get here? That's because driving has become such a routine that we don't have to think about it anymore. That's why we can think about so many other things while we're driving. The same thing goes with other routines that we have. Laura talks about making successful activities a routine. When you're coming up with the things you want to use to make a routine, there's something important to decide, and it's whether it's important or whether it's urgent. Because sometimes we have urgent things that aren't so important, and sometimes there are important things that aren't so urgent. What is it that you want to get done at the first thing in the morning? For example, that I may have some urgent emails that I need to answer first thing in the morning, but is it important? Is it something that I could put off a couple of hours while I did something for me in the morning? Yeah, it is. That email is going to get sent. You don't need to do it first thing in the morning. Do it when you're ready to do it. Take that time first thing in the morning to do those things that you wouldn't normally do. Do the things that are going to become routine and going to help you become successful, because you're going to send that email later. You're going to do those other tasks later. Do those things first thing in the morning that are important and that may not get done otherwise. Another thing to take into account when you're coming up with your morning rituals is what won't get done later if I don't do it now? And what will get pushed on the back burner? If there's something important that this always happens with, move it to the morning, get it done first. One thing that she talks about is that family dinner is often considered a very important thing. But is it the fact that you're having it at dinner that makes it important? Is it the time of day that's important? If that's something that often gets missed in your family because of sporting activities, because kids are going everywhere, because you have work that you have to do, you have to stay late at the office, anything like that, it's okay to switch that to family breakfast. Because you're still having that family meal time, that time that you get to spend with your family in discussion, to talk about things. And if you get that done first thing in the morning, it's getting done every morning. If that becomes a priority for you, then nothing that's going to happen throughout the rest of the day is going to mess up your family mealtime. The third principle is that you should pay yourself first. This is often talked about in the financial world. When you get your paycheck, you should pay yourself first before you pay your bills, meaning save some money, set some aside before you pay your bills. She's saying we need to do this with our time as well, and that's why morning is such an important time. All these things that we would normally do to pay ourselves, as far as time goes, often get pushed out the window. It's really easy for us at the end of the day to say, well, I don't have time to do that for myself. Instead, I'm going to do this other thing. We need to make time for ourselves first. We need to find some things to nurture ourselves, things that really help us throughout the day. Another thing that she mentions is if that meditation and prayer or studying scriptures is important to you, we should do it at that time of day. Not only are you starting off your day on a good note, on something that's important to you, you're also making sure that when you come to that table, when you come to meditation and prayer and scripture study, that you're not already exhausted from the rest of the day. That's something that I have a problem with. I often do that at night, and it means that sometimes I'm just rushing through it so that I can be done. That's part of my goal, is to switch that to morning so that it's not something that gets pushed on the back burner. It's something that's rushed through. It's just something I need to check off my list before I'm done for the day. The fourth thing that Laura talks about in this book is that we should plan our mornings. And not just any morning, we should plan the perfect morning. And then we should go ahead and do that. When you're planning your perfect morning, don't take other things into account. Don't take cost into account. Don't take what else needs to be done into account. Don't plan your perfect morning as things like doing laundry. Laundry is going to get done. This is the time you need to work on yourself. So plan your perfect morning. And once you have your perfect morning planned, you need to work on eliminating obstacles. She talks about a time when she was a young mother and she had exercise as part of her perfect morning. And she knew that with her husband going to work, it became impossible for her to go on morning runs while she had an infant at home. And so in order to eliminate that obstacle, she found another young mother and they traded mornings. One morning, Laura would watch her infant and the other person's infant while the other mom went for a run. The next morning, that mom would watch the children while Laura went for a run. We can find ways to eliminate obstacles, and if cost is tight for you right now, if money is tight for you, you can find free ways. You can trade off times with people. Find other people who want the same thing for you. Oftentimes, you can find fitness classes that have babysitting. You can find people who are willing to take your children while you attend a fitness class if that's important to you. You could wake up a few hours early so that you have time before your children wake up. There's a million ways you can eliminate obstacles. And what it really boils down to is this important enough to me that I'm going to eliminate this obstacle? Once you've got your perfect morning planned, you need to turn it into a habit, to where it's something that if you don't do it, you feel like something's missing. Habits take 21 days to form, which means it's going to take you at least 3 weeks of doing it consistently before you start to feel like you're missing something if you don't do it, before you start to feel guilty if you don't get up and do your morning routine. Don't give up. 21 days is a long time. It may not seem like a long time, but it's a long time, especially when you're trying to form a new habit. I've also found that I struggle with getting up early, as I've mentioned a few times throughout this video. And I know that jumping to waking up at 5:30 every morning is impossible. I'm not going to be able to pull that off. But I also know that I can do it over time. I can take as much time as I need to get my perfect morning into motion. I can start by waking up 15 minutes earlier. And then once that becomes habit, I can work again to wake up half an hour earlier. And once that becomes habit, continue stretching that until I get to where I want to be. The fifth thing that I got out of this book is to audit your time. In a book that Laura Vanderkam previously wrote, she talks about auditing your time. She took the time for that book to audit the time of a lot of successful people. They wrote down what they did in half-hour increments. And as they did that, they were able to see what they were doing with their time that was different from what other people are doing with their time. We can do that same thing. Audit our time for a week and find out where we're losing most of our time, where we're wasting most of our time. And I need to be sure that I remember it's okay to have downtime. Sometimes I push myself too far. It's okay to have downtime, but downtime shouldn't be 4 or 5, 6 hours a day. Downtime should be limited. And once we have our downtime that we need in order to feel rejuvenated, it's time to get back at it. It also helped me to see how much time is going towards putting out fires and how much time goes towards actually trying to reach my goals. We should try to limit the amount of firefighting that we do and try to strengthen the amount of time we have towards meeting our goals. So those were the 5 things that I got out of Laura Vanderkam's book, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. My action item from this book is going to be to plan my perfect morning. I'm going to take the time to do that now. But I'm not going to do that with you because my perfect morning is going to look different from your perfect morning. And some components of that, though, are going to be taking the time to meditate and pray and read scripture. It's going to be taking time to exercise, taking time to spend with my family. Those things that can sometimes get lost in the shuffle. I'm going to take the advice from this book and put those things in my morning routine. What are some things that would be in your morning routine? Let us know in the comments. We would love to see what is important to you. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to Rewrite Your Stars so that you can see the fantastic things that we have coming up. There's so many wonderful things we have coming and we don't want you to miss it. In the description, there are links to both of Laura Vanderkam's books that we've talked about in this video, as well as a link to get yourself an Audible subscription. All 3 of those things are definitely worth your time. I would look into them. Let us know in the comments what book you would like us to review next. We have about 10 to 15 already in the pipeline, so it may be a couple weeks before we get to yours, or a couple months, but I promise we will, because you're that important to us. And, as always, until next time, rewrite your stars.